Happy April Fool's Day. I was going to try to come up with a creative April Fool's joke, but I just couldn't think of a good one. But I know when I was young, on April 1st, people used to come up with a lot of good creative April Fool's jokes. A good one is one that you know people will be at least tempted to believe for a few minutes. You know, like if I came on here and said, hey, I won the lottery today, 99% chance ain't nobody gonna believe that. So yeah, the best April Fool's jokes are the ones that could get a large number of people to believe it for at least 5 to 10 minutes. They believe in what you're saying. But anyway, also today is my late great father's birthday, Dr. Clarence Currie. Dr. Clarence Currie was born on this day in 1929. He would have been he would have been 92 years, so he would have been 92, I think. Yeah, 92. If he was still alive today, my father would be 92 years old. Bless his soul. Anyway, let me get into what I want to talk about. A couple things. Try not to keep it too long, but you know me, some of my stuff could go long. Now, as per usual, I mentioned on a couple recent videos, I said I did a video in 2017 where I lightheartedly talked about my strengths and at least a handful of my weaknesses, even though my ego leads me to believe I don't really have any weaknesses. But no, at least two of my weaknesses I highlighted in that 2017 video was I said, modesty and humility is not a strong suit of mine. Modesty and humility, that was probably my number one, I remember, weakness that I highlighted. I said modesty, and that's why a lot of people love to criticize me. That's been one of the number one criticisms since I got on YouTube, is, RC, he's too egotistical. So full of himself. I read that just earlier this week. Literally, just like, what's today? Thursday? I think it was Monday. Somebody had in the comment section on somebody else's video, they said that was their criticism. They said, ARC sometimes gives good advice. I give him that. But the thing I can't stand about ARC, man, he's just so full of himself, man. He thinks he's God's gift to the manosphere. That's what this guy said about me. He said, ARC is just so full of himself, man. He thinks he's God's gift to the manosphere. Speaking of people criticizing me, my second weakness I highlighted, I said, sometimes I feel compelled, for better or for worse, to respond to some of these goofy-ass, hating-ass, critical comments. Anyway, I've said this at least once or twice before. When it comes to my Mode 1 approach, I generally have two categories of haters. Two categories of haters that's to be distinguished from critics. Remember, again, I distinguish between haters and critics. Haters. One is guys who try to hate on the effectiveness of my Mode 1 approach. That's probably, without question, the largest group of haters is guys who try to, in one way or another, challenge and or attempt to undermine the effectiveness of my Mode 1 approach. And my main topic for this video is going to fall in that category. Because you remember the video I did, I can't remember if it was 2020 or 2019, where I did a video called The Top 5 Dumbest and or Most Invalid Criticisms Against the Mode 1 Approach. The top 5 most dumb and or invalid criticisms of the Mode 1 approach. And one of those top 5 was, if you use the Mode 1 approach, you put yourself in a position to be accused of one of these two things, either sexual harassment at minimum, or more so sexual assault. And I've covered this in at least 2 or 3 videos. So honestly, this might be my 3rd or 4th time addressing that specific criticism. But that is going to be the main branch of this video. So that's group of haters number 1. It's guys who say the Mode 1 approach, I was talking about 2 categories of haters. Yeah, category number 1 is guys who try to challenge and or undermine the effectiveness and benefits of using my Mode 1 approach. Then a secondary, much smaller percentage of guys, not a large percentage of guys, a smaller percentage of guys, and this happened with at least 2 guys earlier this week, and somebody, not in my comment section, but in someone else's comment section, who try to challenge the originality of my Mode 1 approach. Not so much the effectiveness of it. That's the main group of haters. It's guys who like to say Mode 1 is not as beneficial or as effective as ARC wants you to believe it is. That's the number 1 group of haters. Then the second, again, a much smaller group of haters is guys that on the positive end will say, I do think Mode 1 is effective. I do think Mode 1 approach is effective. But here's their criticism. They'll say, yeah, Mode 1 is effective, but ARC is not the originator of Mode 1. Which is ridiculous. ARC is not the originator of Mode 1. Guys were Mode 1 for decades before ARC came on the scene. ARC is not the originator of Mode 1. Now, I haven't done this in a while. And some of my followers and supporters and subscribers have been missing this in my recent videos. They say, ARC, where is the you know what? And I'm about to give you one because it's long overdue. Insert dog face here. Yeah. A lot of my followers, they like, hey man, I loved your last few videos, but man, I ain't seen you do a dog face, man, in a little while, man. I ain't seen you do a dog face since maybe like early February or something, man. Where's your dog faces at? Yeah, that's definitely worthy of a dog. You know what that's like saying? It's so ridiculous, it really technically doesn't even deserve me acknowledging it or responding to it. But it's so ridiculous, I just couldn't help but to talk about it. You know what? For somebody to say, ARC, you're not the originator of Mode 1. Mode 1 was around decades before you even came on the scene. That would be like me saying, hey man, McDonald's ain't the originator of the Big Mac. The Big Mac been around. The Big Mac was around for decades before anybody ever heard of McDonald's. Stupid. It's a lot of stupid people on YouTube, man. I've said that multiple times, and I don't really even like to use that word. I don't like to, honestly, I sincerely don't. I generally don't like to call people stupid. But there's a lot of stupid people, man, here on the internet, man. There's a lot of stupid people. People say, I'm not the originator of Mode 1. Somebody literally just early this week, either on Monday or Tuesday, I was in somebody's comment section. One of my followers directed me to somebody's comment section where my name was being mentioned. And somebody said, I don't remember the exact words, but essentially somebody says, 2 people actually, it's 2 guys. 2 guys went at me under the category of originality. One guy said, I don't know why everybody refers to ARC as the Godfather of direct verbal game, which is my nickname. Actually, the person who first gave me that nickname was Sasha Day Game in 2010. That ain't a nickname I get. None of my popular nicknames are names I gave myself. Some people think I gave myself certain nicknames. No, the Godfather of direct verbal game, that was a nickname that Sasha Day Game gave me back in 2010 when I was in London for his direct dating summit event. He told me that. Yeah, he was the first guy to call me that. And then since after that, then other people started calling me that. Yeah, what happened when made a lot of other guys start calling me that, he one time had a website, a web page on his website, on his old website where he was basically singing my praises, which I appreciated. He had this webpage on his website where he was singing my praises and promoting my books. And that's what he had listed. He called me Alan Roger Currie, dating coach Alan Roger Currie, a.k.a. the Godfather of direct verbal game. And that's when that nickname first came about. So, number one, that was not a nickname I gave myself. Sasha Day-Game gave me that nickname back in 2010. But anyway, going back to this critic, he said, I don't know why guys be referring to ARC as the Godfather of direct verbal game. There were guys who were around before him that have used direct verbal game and or promoted direct verbal game. He ain't the first guy. Well, actually, that's half true. That's at least 50% true. I never said I was the first guy to ever in the history of life use what's known as direct verbal game with a woman. I've never said that. I've never said I was the first guy to ever use. The most obvious example that I wasn't the first guy, my number one source of inspiration and influence for my Mo 1 approach was a fictional character in a porn movie. Look over my right shoulder and you'll see that poster, Talk Dirty to Me. The first person I ever saw use my style of direct verbal game was John Leslie's fictional character of Jack, the fictional prolific womanizer in Talk Dirty to Me and Talk Dirty to Me Part 2. That was my number one influence. It wasn't nobody, like I remember I did a video last year where somebody had asked me, ARC, who was your mentor? Most dating coaches say they've had at least one mentor. And I said on this video, I said, I never had a real life mentor when it came to my Mo 1 approach. Never had, because there was nobody who was Mo 1 in the manner that I later on became Mo 1. There was nobody in my real life who exhibited Mo 1 behavior. Nobody. The only person who exhibited what I would now call Mo 1 behavior was a fictional character in a porn movie. Yeah. There was nobody. I'm talking about of all my close friends, fraternity brothers, I don't know of anybody in my real life who was Mo 1 and even more specifically Mo 1 hardcore with women in the first 2 to 3 minutes of that conversation with a woman. I don't know anybody in my real life who was like that. Particularly sober. There probably was a couple of guys who were drunk that might have said some Mo 1 type of shit while they was drunk to a woman. But sober, I've never known a guy in my real life when I was young that was Mo 1 with a woman. Never. Seriously. Not one person. Now, I know one black male YouTuber who said he knew a guy who's older than me that was what I now call Mo 1. Was BGS Ibmore, said he had a high school classmate that he said, but anyway, going back to this originality challenge. So one guy said, he said, I don't know why guys refer to him as the Godfather of direct verbal game, because there's other guys. Yeah, I would say, realistically, yeah, there were other guys who used direct verbal game. But here's the kicker, and I've talked about this on a couple of videos before. Who broke it down, though, like I have before me? I'll wait. Who broke it down? If you're a long-time follower of mine, you'll remember this, and I'm going to try not to rehash the whole story. But when I first got on YouTube, I've had just a wide variety of stories to do with dealing with women and just even stuff that just do with life in general. And as far as people actually challenging the credibility and effectiveness of my Mo 1 approach, one of the first stories I told when I first got on YouTube back in April 2017 was what I now refer to as the 3 pimp story. Somebody brought this up in one of my live streams a few weeks ago. The 3 pimp story. For those not familiar with the 3 pimp story, a few years ago, I had 2 friends that were close friends with some street pimps. I had one friend who was close friend with 2 street pimps in Los Angeles, and I had another friend who was a close friend to a street pimp in New York. And both of these friends asked these pimps basically, what do you think about Mo 1? What do you think about Alan Roger Currie's Mode 1 approach? Before they read the book, they was hating on me. They was hating on me. The number one thing they was hating on me, among other things, was just my pedigree. And I noticed, on a quick side note, I noticed there's a few guys on YouTube, more specifically black guys on YouTube, who tend to have this attitude that these street pimps had. Like, these street pimps had this attitude, they nicknamed me College Boy. And they was basically like, what does College Boy know about getting women in bed and seducing women and macking on hoes? What does he know about that shit? Their attitude, their general stereotype of a guy who was brought up in a middle class or upper middle class family and that was college educated was that he was a combination of a nerd and a square. A nerd and a square. And again, I know at least a few guys on YouTube who have had that attitude at times. Like, basically, like, if you didn't grow up in the hood, if you didn't grow up in the streets, you don't really know that much about dealing with women. If you didn't grow up in the hood, you didn't grow up in the streets, you don't really know that much about dealing with women. Which is a bullshit stereotype. It's a bullshit stereotype. Matter of fact, if we want to keep shit extra real, extra real, and I'm gonna hurt some feelings and bruise some egos, I would say in many respects, it's just the opposite. In many respects, it's just the opposite. There's a lot of street nigga types, I hate to use that term, but there's a lot of street dudes, they don't know shit about dealing with bougie type women. They know about dealing with street bitches. That's all they know about dealing with is street level hoes. They don't know about dealing with women who come from middle class, upper middle class type backgrounds. Some do, but most of them don't. They ain't never dealt with no bougie level type women like I have. I guarantee you they haven't. I put money on it. They ain't never dealt with no bougie type women like I have. Yeah, I'm doing a bit of ranting, man, because I'm sick of that stereotype. But yeah, that's how these street pimps were. Their attitude was basically like, they told my two friends, again, the one pimp in New York and then there was two pimps in LA, they was basically like, what does College Boy know? And then both my friends basically said, I'm skipping over some miscellaneous details because I don't want to rehash the whole story. It's a little longer. But my two friends basically said, well, why don't you read the book and then give your critique and assessment? So all three of these pimps basically said, okay, we'll read the book. And they read the book. And then they changed. They went from criticizing me and basically treating me like I didn't know what I was talking about to basically, all of them had slightly different critiques, but the general consensus was, oh, this brother know what he's talking about. This brother know what he's talking about. And as far as in the category of originality, this is what they basically said. They said, some of the stuff he talks about in his Mode 1 book is stuff that us street brothers, and particularly us pimps, already know about. But here was the number one compliment all three of them gave me. Number one compliment all three of them gave me. They said, even though some of the stuff in his book is not unique to him, it's stuff that brothers older than him already knew, but they said in terms of breaking it down, like just dissecting the game, in the manner of like a college professor, which is one of my nicknames, Professor Currie, they said in terms of breaking it down like a college professor, they said, oh, I ain't never ran across a motherfucker like this dude, this Currie dude, College Boy. They was like, this dude breaks down the game to its bare essentials that even a college nerd could understand. And they said, for that, we give that guy props. So I go back to my original question under the challenges of originality, and particularly my title of Godfather of Direct Verbal Game. Were there guys that used direct verbal game before me? Sure, there were some guys older than me that used direct verbal game with someone. I'm sure there were. I can't identify them, but I'm sure there were. But my thing is this, man. When it comes to having a book that breaks it down, who is that guy other than me? Name a guy. Don't tell me about your barber at the barber shop and your uncle in Kansas and Nevada. I don't give a fuck. I've said that multiple times before. I don't give a fuck about nobody sharing shit in the streets. Fuck that. I don't care about that. Tell me about something that's copyrighted and published. Copyrighted, published. Copyrighted, published. If it ain't copyrighted, published, I don't want to hear it. Real talk. I don't want to hear about it if it ain't copyrighted and published. So when it comes to stuff that's copyrighted, published, tell me a book that you would say is more of the blueprint, which my book has been called The Blueprint for the Benefits of Direct Verbal Game versus Indirect Verbal Game before Mo 1. Put it in my comments and name a book that you would say, Alan, with all due respect to your Mo 1 book, this book was, it would have to be copyrighted and published before 1999. That's what my first version, well, technically, my first version, Mo 1, was actually copyrighted in 1997. I didn't make it available on the internet until 1999, but it's actually copyrighted in 1997. So technically, you would have to produce a book that came out before 1997 that broke down the essence of direct verbal game, the benefits of direct verbal game, and did a real specific contrast between the pros and cons of direct verbal game versus the pros and cons of indirect verbal game. Go at it in my comment. If you name a book, got to be copyrighted and published before 1997. If it ain't copyrighted and published before 1997, I don't want to hear about it. Don't want to hear about it. Because it don't mean shit to me. Real talk. It don't mean shit to me. If it ain't copyrighted before 1997, don't want to hear about it. And that's being generous by limiting it to 1997, because as y'all know, I first started being Mo 1 with women back in 1984. So I'm cutting off like 13 years. I first started being Mo 1 in 1984. So really, you would have to really, if I want to be real technical, you got to tell me about a motherfucker who was using direct verbal game in a similar manner to me before 1984. A book, or somebody who wrote a book about it. Somebody wrote a book. Don't tell me about no barbershop dude, your uncle who lives in Alabama. I don't give a fuck about none of them dudes. None of them. And then a similar critique I read just earlier this week was somebody said, and I've heard this multiple times before. Somebody said, well, with all due respect to Alan Roger Currie, man, I don't really believe his Mo 1 approach is truly original. What he was clever enough to do, though, is he just took the concept of keeping it real with women and straightforward honesty with women and put his own unique brand tag on it and called it Mo 1. But it's basically like, all Mo 1 is really about is being straightforward with women about the fact that, you just want casual sex with them and you don't want a relationship with them, and basically just, keeping it real. What brothers in the streets just call keeping it real. And he just took that concept and put his Mo 1 tag on it. I don't agree with that. I don't agree. Because, guys have said before that, Alan, you just took the concept of basically being verbally direct and straightforward honest and put your own name on it. That's not 100% true. That's not 100%. Because, number one, you could be Mo 4 and be keeping it real and be straightforwardly honest with women. See, that's what people don't understand. If you look at that chart I did where I talked about direct verbal game versus indirect verbal game, see, there's at least two forms of direct verbal game. There's what I call Mo 1 direct verbal game, then there's Mo 4 direct verbal game. And remember that video I did? I did a video, I can't remember, it was last year or 2019. I'm getting old, I can't remember. But I did a video called ARC versus David X versus Brad Blanton. Because like Brad Blanton has a book called Radical Honesty that you could say a lot of it was promoting straightforward honesty, being verbally direct and straightforwardly honest with really people in general. His didn't limit it to women, talking about people in general. And then David X had an ebook called Being Relentless, where he talked about being direct. Well, with his book, and I've explained this before, David X, he doesn't really teach guys to be verbally direct. He more so says his piece of advice simply is don't give a fuck what women think about you. That's his piece of advice. He says don't give a fuck what women think about you. And if you don't really, truly don't give a fuck what women think about you, you'll naturally be direct. But here's where I said both of them, where I'm distinguished from both of them, and I respect both of those guys, David X and Brad Bland. But see, when they talk about being really straightforwardly honest with women, they don't make a distinction between mode 1 and mode 4. Who did that before me? Who did that before me? For example, if you could go up to a woman today and say, hey, bitch, you no good bitch, I want to fuck the shit out of you. I ain't gonna never be your boyfriend, I ain't gonna never be your husband, but I'll fuck the dog shit out of you, no good bitch. Would you say that's mode 1? Fuck no. Is that even mode 1 hardcore? No, that's mode 4, man. If you gotta call a woman a no good bitch, that automatically makes it mode 4. That automatically. I was the first guy to distinguish between smooth, seductive, direct verbal game versus rude, crass, mean-spirited, antagonistic type direct verbal game. Big difference. It's a big difference, man. Some people try to say, I've heard at least a handful of people say, oh, what's the difference? Mode 1, mode 4, what's the... There's a big difference. There's a big difference between being mode 1 and mode 4. I've done at least 2 or 3 videos about that. Again, the similarity between the two is they both represent direct verbal game, but the delivery of them is totally different, man. Mode 1 is when you use direct verbal game in a very smooth, persuasively charming, seductive type manner. That's mode 1. Who was talking about that before me in book form? Who? Name them. I want you to. Name somebody. Again, tell me about a book that came out before, that was copyrighted before 1997, where somebody was talking about smooth, seductive, confident, highly self-assured, direct verbal game that included elements of erotic dirty talk. Before 1997. Tell me about that book. I'll wait. So y'all can miss me with that, man. Y'all can miss me with that. It wasn't no mode 1 before me. There was different other people's forms of direct verbal game before me. Yeah, that's true. There was other people's various forms of direct verbal game before me, but nobody used direct verbal game just like me before me because they didn't have the experiences that I had. They didn't have the experiences that I had. That's why I'm against this notion of the game is the game is the game is the game, basically saying that all knowledge, wisdom, and insight is universal. No, it ain't. Because ain't nobody out there that had the exact same experiences with women as me. I'll put money on that. I'll put money on that. I'll put money on that. You know you lying if you're trying to give people the impression you had the exact same experiences as me. I give you one off the top of my head. How many of you guys had hundreds of women pay you for phone sex? Done had phone sex with over 2,000 women in your life with a sizable percentage of those women paying you for phone sex? I dare you to come in my comment section and raise your hand and say, yeah, I've done that. You know you lying. You know you, as they say, cap it. You know you cap it. Don't try to act like you had the same experience as me. If you dropping game that's not representative of your life's experiences with women, you ain't dropping game. You dropping somebody else's game. Boom. Drops mic. I'm sick of all these niggas just taking other people's life experiences and then presenting it like it represents their own. That's the problem I have with 3/4 of the dating coaches out here. Y'all ain't dropping real game. Y'all dropping game from other people's experiences. From other people's experiences with women. I drop game from my experiences with women. Real talk. You don't hear me on a video talking about, well, yeah, my best friend, he was seducing these two women in the club, and I want to tell you how he did it. You ain't gonna hear me on no video talking about that shit. I done heard other dating couples, they be talking about their brother, their friend, their cousin, their mentor, what he did. No, nigga, tell me what you've done. And most of y'all ain't gonna be able to hang with this brother right here. Number one, just simply because of age. I'm 58. So if somebody's 28, I know I blow all their experiences out the water. I put $10,000 on that. Real talk. Even if you're 38 or 48, I know there's a 90 to 99% chance my experience with women blows yours out the water. Guarantee it. Y'all be killing me, man. Well, no Mo 1 before I came up with Mo 1. Period. It's in the story. And if you don't believe I'm the godfather of direct verbal game advice and wisdom, if you don't believe it, and I ain't forcing nobody to agree or co-sign with my nickname, it's your choice to not co-sign. But I'm saying if you don't co-sign with it, the one thing I will say is that show me an author, a guy who's a combination of an author and a dating coach. You got to be an author. Again, I don't want to hear about your barber. I don't want to hear about your uncle. I don't want to hear about no nigga ain't got nothing that's copyrighted and published. Show me a guy he got to be some type of book author that got a book out that was copyrighted before 1997, who you would choose as the godfather of direct verbal game. If he ain't got no book, I don't want to hear about him. Two types of guys I don't want to hear about. If the guy ain't got no book, I don't want to hear about him. I don't want to hear about him. I don't care if he's your uncle, your cousin, your brother, whoever. If he ain't got no copyrighted and published book, I don't want to hear about him. Number two, if he has a book, but it was copyrighted and or published after mine, I don't want to hear about him either. Either one of them two. If he don't have a book, I don't want to hear about him. Or if he has a book, but it was copyrighted and or published after mine, which would be after 1997, I don't want to hear about him. I don't want to hear about him. Don't care. So again, you can say Alan Roger Currie is not the godfather of direct verbal game, but I'm saying, I'm inviting you, tell me who is then. Tell me who is. That doesn't fall in those two categories I just mentioned. Tell me who is then. Again, if they ain't got no book, don't want to hear about them. And if they got a book, but it came out after mine, don't want to hear about them. Now, I took a long time to get to that. Wasn't all the stuff I just talked about. That wasn't even the main reason why I got on this to record this video. I had a guy recently ask me, and I don't think he was just hating. He seemed genuine. He said, Alan, you seem, I don't remember the exact words, so I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he said, you seem to kind of give off the impression that if guys are Mo 1, that they will never, ever experience any legal related trouble. But can you explain to me how, because I watched a video where you said that, that Mo 1 has the ability to prevent false and invalid date rape charges compared to, say, Mo 2 or Mo 3 behavior. But even if you Mo 1 with a woman, couldn't a woman just turn around the next day or 2 days later or 3 days later and just lie on you and lie about you and say, that you date raped her or sexually assaulted her or whatever? Well, here's the thing. Number one, I never said that Mo 1 was what 100%. I want to make that clear because I may have to make this clear before. I never said that Mo 1 approach is guaranteed to prevent a false or invalid date rape charge. I've never ever said this. I don't want anybody to quote me as saying that, because I've had a couple people try to quote me as saying that. I never said that. And along with me, Katie Costner, who's one of the nation's, if not the nation's, #1 sexual assault and date rape prevention activists, who I've collaborated with doing some videos about this issue. Because, you know, she sung the praise of Mode 1 and publicly endorsed my Mode 1 approach. But she even said, she never said that the Mode 1 approach will 100% guarantee that you will never have a woman file a false or invalid date rape charge of sexual assault against you. But she said it significantly diminishes the chance of it. And that's what I would say. It significantly diminishes the chance of it. Because if a woman accuses you of sexual assault or date rape, they're going to have to prove something. They're going to have to prove something. Yeah, it can't just be on their word. They're going to have to be able to prove something. See, Mode 1 approach is all about getting a woman's verbal consent. And I don't want to rehash previous videos I've done on this, but I've already done a video on that. It's all about getting a woman's verbal consent. And see, that's why I don't believe in, like, I've heard Mode 2 guys who use Mode 2 behavior or some other form of indirect form of behavior. Well, Mode 2 represents all indirect forms of behavior. But guys talking about, oh, I just invite a woman over my crib and give her some wine, and then I just start making moves. See, that's when you set yourself up. That's when you most set yourself up for false date rape charge. Now, anytime you giving a woman alcohol and or drugs, you fucking up. Real talk. Seriously. Anytime you giving a woman alcohol and or drugs, you fucking up. That's when you give a woman clear ammunition for plausible deniability, is when you give her alcohol and or drugs. I don't give women alcohol or drugs. Number one, I don't do drugs at all. So I never give women drugs. As far as alcohol, I never give women alcohol if it's my first time having sex with a woman. Ever. I don't do that shit, man. I'm serious. I don't give women alcohol. I don't try to get women drunk in order to have sex with them. That's a big boo-boo. If you get a woman to say, I want you to fuck me, you doing good. You got verbal consent. Period. If you get a woman to say, I want you to fuck me, she can deny that later on, but the truth gonna come out. She can try to deny that later on that she never said that, but the truth gonna come out. Shit, if you have to, record the shit. Here's the thing I always say to guys, though, a lot of guys who want to say, oh, you know, Mode 1 puts you in more of a position to be Me Too'd, to be Me Too. I always issue this chart. Name 5 guys who were Mode 1 with a woman that became major targets of the Me Too movement. Seriously. Name 5 guys. Minimum, it could be more than that, but it can't be less than that. Name a minimum of 5 guys who were simply Mode 1 with a woman that became major targets of the Me Too movement. Because I honestly, and there's been hundreds, if not by now, maybe thousands of guys that have been targets of the Me Too movement. I honestly can't name 5. I can't name 5 guys who were Mode 1 with women. Most of the guys who were targets of Mode 1, I'm going to go starting with most extreme to least extreme. Starting with most extreme, the number 1 guys who were targets of the Me Too movement is guys who raped or date raped women. Guys who were guilty of raping or date raping women. Right underneath that, I would say guys who were very physically aggressive with women. See, the only way you can be accused of sexual assault is if you touch a woman. And more specifically, you're very physically aggressive, physically and sexually aggressive with a woman. That ain't me. So, yeah, at the most extreme, most of the targets of the Me Too movement were guys who were um, charged and in many cases convicted of raping or date raping women. Number two, they if not rape or date raping, at minimum they were charged with being very physically and sexually aggressive with women. Number three, they were charged with groping women and or exposing their genitalia, i.e. their penises. That'll be the third category of men who were major targets of the Me Too movement. Guys who were charged with groping women, physically touching women without their permission, and or exposing, like Charlie Rose, who I used to love and adore and respect his show. I loved his show. He used to be on PBS. Charlie Rose. He would fall in category number three. The comedian Louis C.K. would also fall in that category. Yeah, both of those two guys were charged with combination of groping women and exposing their genitalia to women. So far we got three categories, man. None of them represent more than one. Date raping women, right? Being, if not flat out raping women, being very physically and sexually aggressive with women. See, on the side note, this is why a lot of men have problems with feminism. I'm going to be real. This is why a lot of men have problems with feminism. Because, see, if you do your research, for the lack of time, I can't get into a long, detailed academic story, but in real overly simplistic terms, see, starting with the beginning of time, it was in man's nature, because of his testosterone and just his biological nature, it was in man's nature to just basically, for lack of a better way of saying it, just taking the pussy. That's what men were used to doing for literally centuries, just taking the pussy. Unless that woman had another man that would prevent you from taking the pussy, such as her father, her older brother, her husband, boyfriend, or whatever. That was the role of men back in the day. Was one reason why women gravitated towards guys who were big, strong, masculine, had good fighting skills, or had weapons, is to prevent men from just taking the pussy. Because that was men's nature, was to just take the pussy, unless they had another man standing in their way to stop them. But see, in modern day society, you can't just take the pussy, man. Unless a woman gives you a green light to do it, which for a lot of men, that takes away the fun for them. But in today's society, man, you can't, as a man, you can't just take the pussy. And that's why, honestly, I ain't gonna say that's the only reason, but that's one of the reasons why a lot of men hate the effects of feminism. They feel like, in a manner of speaking, you're preventing me from being the man I was born to be. A lot of men feel like it's in their nature to just take the pussy. Not in modern day, not in civilized society. Not in modern day civilized society, particularly with the effects of feminism. Hell no, you're gonna land in prison real quick. But anyway, going back to Me Too targets. So, rapists, date rapists, category number one. Guys, second category, guys that not quite rapists or date rapists, but they were physically aggressive with the women. Third, guys who were groping women and or exposing their genitalia. Fourth category is men who attempted to exchange favors for sex, like a woman's boss basically saying to a woman, if you suck my dick, I'll give you a promotion, or you better give me some pussy, or you might lose your job. That's what, I hate to say it, my own frat brother, Tavis Smiley, that's what he got accused of. Tavis Smiley kind of fell into category number 4. A lot of women who worked for him accused him of obligating them to have sex with him in exchange for either keeping their job or getting a promotion. That's what, now he denies all of this. He denies all of this, but that's what he got, at minimum, that's what he got accused of. Women from his job said, he told him that basically, if you don't give me some pussy, then I'm either going to fire you or at minimum, I'm not going to give you a promotion. But that's category number 4 of most of the Me Too targets. It's guys who offered women some kind of monetary reward or career-related award in exchange for sex. What else? What would be a 5th category? I'm forgetting. I would say the 5th and final category would be simply being misleading and disingenuous and duplicitous. Of course, you know who the number one person I talked about in this category as far as celebrities, Aziz Ansari. Aziz Ansari. This is the category of Aziz Ansari. He falls in the category number 5. He didn't rape or date rape that woman he went to dinner with. He wasn't necessarily physically aggressive, although she did say he was at times a little bit physically aggressive. So actually he did kind of somewhat fall in category number 2. He didn't grope her without her permission or expose his genitals. And he didn't offer any type of monetary reward or career-related benefit. But the one thing he was guilty of was simply being, if nothing else, sexually duplicitous. Which I mentioned in a recent video that some women are trying to make that a crime. There's some women in other countries, not so much here in the United States yet, but in other countries, there's some women who's trying to make being dishonest, misleading, manipulative, and sexually duplicitous not just unethical, but a legal crime. I posted something on my community page about that. There's some women that want category number 5 to be a crime. Yeah, that's what Aziz Ansari, to refresh your memory on him, what he did was he invited this woman who was a groupie of his, he invited her to dinner. And at the dinner, he acted totally just like the typical nice guy, being friendly with her, never brought up the subject of sex. Acted like he just wanted to have a friendly dinner with her. Then he invited her back to his apartment. And then once he got back to the apartment, he started making moves on her. She said he became this really aggressive, kinky freak type dude. Now, she made it clear. She said he didn't rape her or attempt to date rape her. So he was exonerated of any type of date rape charge. She also admitted that she did perform oral sex on him, not once, but twice. So she did give in to his sexual advances. But if no other criticism, she said, when we were at dinner, he gave no hint that he wanted to have sex with me. In other words, he was mode 2. He was mode 2, man. He wasn't mode 1. And even though he didn't end up getting charged with a crime or having to go to jail or prison, that for at least a year and a half, that incident tainted his career. That tainted his career, man. And this was a guy who was known for pandering to women, essentially being a male feminist. Who does that sound like? Who's been in the news recently? Pandering to women, and the same women you pandered to turn around and ruin your whole image and reputation. That's what happened to Aziz Ansari. A lot of the guys who were Me Too targets in Hollywood were guys who had reputations for being male feminists and supporting, feminism causes and tenets. So, all that to say, man, yeah, name me 5 dudes that the only thing they were guilty of was being just mode 1 with a woman, and they got into legal trouble. Let me put emphasis on legal. I'm not talking about they got suspended or fired from their job, because I already did a bunch of videos on that. Bottom line, man, you shouldn't be trying to get laid where you get paid. So don't come to me like, well, I know this one guy, he got fired because he told a woman he wanted her to suck his dick. No, quit trying to fuck your coworkers and business colleagues. So fuck that. I don't want to hear about that. That ain't legal. That's corporate. That's corporate. That ain't legal. I'm talking about where a guy got in trouble that could have potentially landed him in jail or prison. Name 5 guys that the only thing they were guilty of was mode 1. That were targets of the Me Too movement. I'm going to close on this, addressing sexual harassment and sexual assault. Sexual harassment, that's mainly job related. That's mainly job related. In a few extenuating circumstances, go beyond the job, but that's mainly job related. Sexual harassment, in order for you to be legitimately accused of harassment, the woman, here's the one obligation a woman has. And this is why a lot of men have problems with the concept of sexual harassment. A woman has to reject you at least once, preferably 2 or more times, but at least once. In other words, if you go up to a woman and say, hey, Linda, I would like to take you to dinner, and then maybe afterwards you come to my place and, we can have some fun. And the woman says, oh my God, you're harassing me. That's bullshit. That's not harassment, because she didn't reject you. She didn't reject you yet. Harassment, you can drop off the word sexual. Harassment itself is when you're persistently trying to make contact with somebody after they already let you know at least once that they don't want to be bothered with you. So in order for you to be accused of sexual harassment, a woman has to say at least once, hey, John, I'm not interested in sharing your company. And then from that point, if you keep trying to persuade her to share your company, you're guilty of harassment. If a woman says to me, Alan, I'm not interested in sharing your company, that's why one of my opening comments, one comments with women is, when would you like to share my company? So I could give a woman a chance to say, I don't want to share your company. See how that works? That's a lot of my approaches vary from woman to woman, but the closest thing I have to a default Mo one approach is I'll approach a woman and I'll say, so, when would you like to share my company? Next week or the week after? I'm inviting her to share my company, which gives her an easy way to say, I don't want to share your company. Then I'll be like, cool. The only way a woman can accuse you truly, legitimately of harassment is she has to reject you at least once. She has to tell you, I don't want to share your company, and you continue to persist. That's the nature of harassment. You don't give a woman a chance to tell you, no, I'm not interested. Assault, simple assault is you got to touch a woman. A woman, like I've heard people say, hey, won't Mo One Hardcore get you charged with sexual assault? How could it if you ain't touched a woman? The only way you can be charged with sexual assault is if you touch a woman. You can't, there's no such thing as verbal sexual assault. There's no such thing as that. At least not in this country. I ain't going to speak for all the countries in the world, but I know definitely in the United States, there's no such thing as verbal sexual assault. In order for you to be accused of sexual assault, you have to touch a woman, grope a woman without her permission. So, to wrap up, Mo One will not give you 100% guarantee on preventing false, invalid date rape charges. But compared to all the alternatives, it's the best thing going out there. Sincerely, the originator of the Mo One approach. The originator of the Mo One approach. The Godfather of direct verbal game advice and wisdom.